Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Bourbon Friday Show. We're so happy that you guys tuned in. We've just been having a great time. I am your co-host, Christian Johnson.
I'm Nick Niehaus.
And we got a really great show, so we're going to be interviewing a really awesome guy from the startup community, James Thomas over here. And like this week, we're just going to be having a great discussion also about networking tips and etiquette. So we're going to dig in. But first, we definitely want to hear more about James and what he is doing with the startup community. He's actually a member at T-Rex, and he's been here for a while. And so, James, can you just tell us just a little bit about who you are, how long you've been at T-Rex, and also you have a show too as well.
Yes. James Thomas, Morning Blend, producer, Morning Blend St. Louis. It's on ABC 30 locally on KDNL ABC 30 every Sunday morning at 6 a.m. Okay. And I've been here at T-Rex almost 2 years now, getting ready to hit 3 years, I think a few. And the show is telling a better story about St. Louis, which includes a startup and innovative community. Also includes people that are doing great things in the city of St. Louis, little hidden gems of St. Louis. And because of what has happened over the last couple of years with the Ferguson and everything else, we have another segment called Talking Points, which is our community affairs segment. What I'm trying to do there is actually set up a bridge of communication between law enforcement and the minority community.
That's amazing.
Wow.
As a former police officer, I would say thank you for that.
Well, thank you. You're welcome.
Yeah. So just being in the startup community, you get to see so many amazing founders and stuff. What are maybe like a interesting story that you've seen or interesting company that you've covered?
Joe Waddle, who was the managing partner for Edward Jones. We got a chance to interview him.
Okay.
And talk about what he does as a CEO.
Yeah.
You know, as a managing partner for Edward Jones. Also on our show, we had the new mayor, Lada Cruzen. And we talked about some of the great things that go on in St. Louis. One of the most interesting conversations I had was with not a big person, but a little person who was actually overseeing the move of the NGA from downtown St. Louis in front of Anheuser-Busch to North St. Louis. So there's an interview with him, and all this is on our YouTube channel.
Okay.
Morning Blend St. Louis YouTube, and we have Facebook, Morning Blend St. Louis. So those are some pretty interesting interviews we've done. I think Heather Matthews, who's over at Washington University, over their entrepreneurship program, they brought her in from Berlin, Germany.
Wow.
To head that up. That's a very interesting person to be interviewed. So it's been quite a few interesting people. I got to give some shout out to the Dean of the John Cook School of Business at St. Louis University, Mark Higgins. He was a very interesting interview. Even Travis was a very interesting interview over at the Chick Cafe.
Wow. Okay.
Before he moved up to global.
Yeah, global.
Yeah, globally.
Travis Sheridan.
Yeah, Travis Sheridan. So he was a very interesting interview. So those are a few people.
That's amazing.
So I mean, I guess my little more selfish question, since we just started doing our own show here, obviously you're light years ahead of us. So how did you get on mainstream TV? I'm kind of curious about that. How did that work?
It was a Bourbon Friday.
Oh, was it? Okay. Yeah, great. No,
basically, the whole thing started off as a joke and a dare. For those of you who, if a lot of millennials are watching, you probably never heard what I'm talking about. But Soul Train and American Bandstand. Mm-hmm. And my brother dared me to do my own dance show here in St. Louis. And I just happened to go to, you guys know it as Charter, but back in the day it was known as TCI. And I went to them public access station and talked to them about a dance show. And they had a multi-camera truck, which does about 4 or 5 cameras. They've been sitting on their lot for 2 years with no use. Oh, really? She goes, dance show, you audition the dancers, you find a club, we'll shoot it. And I found Panama Jacks in Collinsville, Illinois. We had over 150 dancers back in 1990. Wow. Tell them my age, 1990. And it was on public access for quite some time. Wound up doing Chicago studios in Chicago and got it in 14 markets on UPN stations. Wow. That was interesting. And finally back here in St. Louis, and I got on, back in the day, 1995, KPLR Channel 11. Mm-hmm. You know, I got the chance to get on there. And that's how I transitioned from public access to broadcast television. buying my airtime and going out and knocking on doors and getting sponsors.
Wow.
Knocking on doors.
Knocking on doors, doing
Like,
sales
yeah.
calls, and
Like-
trying to make a little money at it at the same time.
That's important. And that's one thing that I think a lot of startups can really learn from you. Just like learning how to just knock on those doors and get those sales. Pick up that phone, call those potential sponsors, and not give up to. I think that's one cool thing about this ecosystem. We can learn from each other and build relationships.
Yeah.
That's also the reason why with Bourbon Friday, like we kind of created Bourbon Friday to kind of help cultivate these relationships. And so even how Bourbon Fridays, Venture Cafe, there's other many networking events that have happened, and I think we're going to talk a little bit about.
So this
that.
is Bourbon Friday, right?
This is Bourbon Friday. It is.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's not bourbon.
Yeah, I was
bourbon,
going to
you know.
say, yeah, but yeah, definitely.
It still works. Yeah, it's all right. So I mean, I think we want to talk about that startup ecosystem a little. So I'm curious. So you've been kind of in the startup mode, kind of hustling for three decades, or it sounds like.
I would
right?
say, yeah. I actually learned how to hustle. I was in a retail shop. I was working in a clothing store, and this guy kept coming in. He was always dressed very sharp in suits.
Yeah.
So I finally asked him what he did, and he told me he was a stockbroker.
Okay.
And he said, "Well, we're going to lunch one day." I said, "Cool." He says, "So what do you want to do?" "I want to be a stockbroker. I'll make a lot of money."
Yeah.
And he goes, "Well, let me tell you about the job you have right now." He said, "You're never going to make any money working for someone else. Never." So I said, "Okay." So I tried being a stockbroker, but unfortunately, Series 22 I got passed, but Series 7 I failed 5 times.
Okay.
No. man.
5 times. But I was working for an insurance company, and when you work for an insurance company, it's strictly commission.
Yeah.
If you don't sell, you don't eat.
Exactly.
You don't pay your bills.
Exactly.
So that was hanging over my head. So when you're on your own and you gotta eat and you want to drive this nice Cougar that I bought and you want to wear suits and have some fun, you got to hustle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if there's one skill that I say that anybody can learn that stays with you for the rest of your life, which is one of the most important skills that any company could have, is sales. Because without sales, you don't have a company. You got to have a customer you got to have something that somebody wants. You got, or it might them want it. So you need to really learn how to sell.
Yeah.
And that's what I did with insurance. And from there, it was just natural for me to go start knocking on doors and asking for $5 advertisements when I was in the public access and leased access. And some guy says, "You need to be on broadcast TV instead of asking for $5. You need to ask for $2,000." And that was a mental challenge to go from $5 to $2,000 asking for that money. But once you start asking for it, now it's easy to ask for $6,000, $10,000, $15,000, $25,000. It gets easier and easier.
Yeah, I think that's something that when you get into sales for the first time, because I totally agree. I mean, if you're going to start a business, like you either have to have already done sales and know how to do it, or you got to get a co-founder that can sell, right?
Exactly.
You got to have that skill. And I think that like to me, when I first started, that was the hardest part, was this idea of going from selling small, cheap things to thousands of dollars. I used to sell paint jobs. Sometimes you sell $1,000 paint job, and next quote's $20,000, and
Right.
it's like you should just approach it the same way.
Right. And marketing is not selling.
That's true.
No,
yes.
it's not.
Two totally different things.
Yeah. But they work hand in hand.
They work hand in hand.
Yeah.
You got to know how to implement each.
Yes.
You got to know, like, okay, if I got to build my product, I got to either have a co-founder that is really great at selling, or if I'm really great at marketing, all has to be able to work together.
Mm-hmm.
And
So who does the sales in your business, Christian? Are you the salesman?
I am the salesman, but also I'm proud to say, like, my co-founder is also good at selling.
Yeah.
So and we have very complementary gifts, and I'm able to kind of drive some of the conversations in our sales meeting, but she closes them. So
No, really?
I'll put
She's your closer, man.
Yeah,
So
she's
you're doing the marketing,
man.
he's doing the marketing,
Yeah,
right?
So she's like, okay, Like, this is what it is.
You gotta ask for it. Ask for the check.
Gotta ask, and then you gotta like learn how to just shut up.
Right.
Like, as soon as you make that sell, and
Shut
you
up.
said everything you need to say, shut up.
Yeah.
People talk themselves out of sales.
Yeah.
But this is not about sales.
No.
But it is all. But this conversation today is we're talking.
You know, I'm not quite sure if I can say it's not all about sales, because as a startup, as a company, this particular session,
Yeah, no, I mean, I think so. We're at about 10 minutes, I think, so we want to move on to a little bit more of a panel discussion type of approach. So we want to talk about networking etiquette today, right?
Yes.
So I think you guys, were recently at a networking event that kind of spurred a conversation about, what is the appropriate way to do networking. I don't know if you had anything you wanted to say about that to get us started.
Yeah, I just saying that especially here in this St. Louis ecosystem, startup ecosystem, there's many different events like Bourbon Friday, or Venture Cafe, or just different events. And if we want to be thriving businesses, we have to properly know how to interact with each other. And like I've recently experienced several situations where it just was not happening properly, and people feeling harassed, and just like in the past months where like there's been a national attention around like calling out people that are in positions of power, or just positions of authority, or just people that have harassed women. Many times it's women, and also it's not excluding males as well. And people are now like, it's time to really start calling attention to that. And I think in the ecosystem of startups, we need to make sure that it doesn't have a presence in our ecosystem.
Yeah.
And that I think it's definitely a needed conversation. So that's what we're going to talk about today.
Okay. So let's start with a couple simple tips, maybe, and then we can maybe analyze it a bit. I think the number one thing that people need to understand is that networking is not dating. Right. So, I mean, although I think one thing that happens in St. Louis a lot in particular is that, networking a lot of times has drinking involved, right? So a lot of, St. Louis, big beer city.
A lot of free beer.
Oh my gosh. Like it's almost like if you don't offer free beer, if the event is after 5 p.m., like people are just like, what? Like, what are you doing with this event? So, so there is a lot of drinking at these events. However, that doesn't mean that you're there to flirt or try to hook up with someone, right? So that should be a no-brainer, but I for some reason, like you said, we've seen examples of this recently, and it just needs to be made really clear, like that's not what networking is about, right?
Exactly.
So what is networking about? What do you guys think is kind of the point of going to these events?
Well, another point is you don't want to push yourself or your company on people. You talk about networking etiquette.
Yeah.
What I love about Venture Cafe and what I've learned from Venture Cafe is I go to a lot of networking events, St. Louis University, Danforth Science Center, UMSL, Venture Cafe, just everywhere. And one of the things that I do, a network after work, I kind of surprise them because everybody's pushing cards there.
Yeah.
So I met these two guys at Network After Work, so I asked them what did they do, and they were aerodynamic engineers at Boeing. So like, tell me about that. I mean, what's involved with that?
Yeah.
What happens with the wings? So they got into this conversation with me, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, this guy goes, "Hey, what do you do?" And he said, "You're refreshing. You're not pushing anything. What do you do?"
Yeah.
So I think if you ask somebody, "What do you do? What are you about?" That's part of it too. Don't push yourself on someone. If they ask for a card, give it to it. And when you talk about harassing and sexually harass, what I like about networking events, and I'll say this as a man, there are women there who are attractive, who are cute, but you know what intrigues me about them? Their conversation.
Yeah.
I mean, to have an interesting, intelligent conversation, it is, to me, that is a high. To have that interesting, intelligent conversation, and you're really involved with that person. Example, I met two redheads, very attractive at Venture Cafe, and we got into a conversation, and they were both PhDs. And what they did was they were splicing DNA, looking for the gene that causes prostate cancer.
Oh wow!
I mean, yeah, so I was like blown away with their conversation. I forgot about it. They were just.
Could you understand it? Like, was it even? Like, I feel like I'd be lost.
Now, here's the fun part. That's what is intriguing to me. I want to understand and I want to learn. So it's more interesting to talk to them versus looking at them as an object.
Sure.
They're a person and you're having a conversation and you're going back and forth. I mean, that to me that's the juice.
Yeah.
That's the juice. Not even the females, just anybody that's at a networking event, male, female, whoever.
Yeah.
Having that interesting conversation and sharing thoughts and ideas.
Yeah.
That's the juice.
Yeah.
That's the juice.
I think one thing that people have to understand when they're networking is, this goes back to the idea of like pushing your card.
Yeah.
Like how many, I get 20, 30 business cards a week and they end up in a stack on my desk and most of the time I'm not following up because there's no reason to, right? And so it's like you should only give someone a business card when they ask for it, right? Like or you ask for theirs and then they kind of do an exchange. Like you shouldn't be out there trying to push that. And then back to your point is like people like people who ask them questions, right? So like I will really like you if you ask me about myself, right? So if you want to win in networking and you want to build those relationships, you don't talk much, right? You just ask questions.
And it's like sales. People like to talk about themselves.
Of course,
they do. Yeah.
You gotta listen.
Yeah.
I think that's what's really, really important. And actually, I think I really wanted to talk this week before this came up about really listening. We actually talked last week about listening to your market, your potential customers.
Yep.
If you just shut your mouth, right, and you just listen and learn about other people.
Ask that intriguing question so they will open up to you.
Yeah, and people do business with people. I think I said that last week on the show.
You're building relationships.
Yep. So I think that's how you win at networking. So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I will say a couple other kind of simple tips. Simple things. Obviously dress appropriately for the event. I mean, and it's funny because you always think of these like duh. But then I remember, like, I've been networking for, like, over 10 years. Like, these things have become kind of second nature. But depending on the environment, sometimes you might need to wear a suit, depending on where you're going. Other times, jeans and a T-shirt are fine, and that's what you should be doing. So, dressing appropriately. You don't want to push business cards, but please bring some, right? I mean, that can be, it's funny because I think especially for millennials, we think, oh, it's all electronics, it's technology, like, oh, we'll text
Let me tell you, I'll take a picture of your card.
Yeah, right? And it's like, yeah, you can do that, but like when somebody goes home, like they're going to pull their stack of cards out and they're going to look at them. And so, yeah, make sure you have business cards. And I'm kind of a business card nerd. Like, we do a lot of graphic design in our business. And so I'm obsessed with like cool, interesting business cards. Like people have like metal cards sometimes. Like, so doing something to stand out, I think goes a long way.
Can I throw one more thing in? Because you talked about food and booze. Okay, another thing, etiquette is don't get inebriated.
Yeah, don't get drunk.
Don't get drunk. Please don't do that. Yeah. Enjoy the one drink. Get to know people. Loosen up a little bit.
Of course.
Hold the conversation.
Yeah. So and that's one interesting thing. Thank you for saying that because it is all about connecting with people, and you want to bring your best self. And like yes, we drink during networking events. But we want to stay at a professional level because when you're able to control yourself, like people feel more comfortable with you, and then they'll actually want to do business with you. So that's what we wanted to talk about today on Bourbon Friday. This has just been a really great conversation.
Thank you for inviting me, guys. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, time talking to
Thank you.
Yeah, I guess I do want to add one little announcement about the Bourbon Friday event moving forward. So we've talked to the T-Rex administration, so to speak, and we've kind of worked out the kinks in terms of what Bourbon Friday is moving forward. So we're hoping you've seen an episode or two, you're excited about coming. It is an invite-only event, but we are allowed to welcome people from outside of T-Rex if you're invited by someone inside of T-Rex. So if you would like to attend Bourbon Friday, if you want to come hang out with us, please send us an email, text us. You can get a hold of me on Facebook. It's, Nick Niehaus. Look up my page or my personal profile. I'm sure Christian will be okay. Talking to you as well. You can reach out to Multipass, right?
Yep, just hit it. Yeah, let us know. Send us a message. Also, with this video, please share it with your friends. Let us just really get talking about like what's happening in this ecosystem. You want to say anything else, James?
I think I do. You guys should give one shout out to your technical director, so everybody knows who that is.
Sure. Yeah. So we'd like to thank Vanessa Lobo, my business partner at Connects Marketing, for being our producer on the show and handling all the shots and the sound and lighting.
Thank you, T-Rex. Thank you, EQ, for sponsoring this Media Lab and this show, and just all the rest of our amazing partners and people that have just been supporting us. So, okay. Thank you, guys. We will see you guys next week. Please share.
Please
I'll see you guys later.